kill my family.
This case is still a mystery, and whether you think he's innocent or guilty, there's still a lot of unanswered questions.
So you were convicted of a horrible crime. Why should anyone want to hear your side of the story? Why should anyone care about what you have to say 20 years later?
If I have a chance to get the reality out there, if I have a chance to show people what the truth is, and if they're willing to accept it, maybe that takes a little bit of hurt off my family. And that would be the biggest thing that I can accomplish right now. Don't trust me, but look at the evidence.
How can I help you?
Yeah, my daughter can.
He called me. He thought she might be at my house. And when I answered the phone, he said, "Mom, is Lacey there?" And I told him no.
When I got home, I started to call her friends. And they hadn't spoken to her. They didn't know where it was. And then as the hours progressed, it's like, oh my God, she's not somewhere that we know of. So it was anxiety and panic.
Scott said that Lacey went to walk the dog and she hadn't come back.
Scott was there. I told him who I was and what I was there for, and I was, there to help. And he was kind of just nonchalant. He didn't have any urgency about him that I noticed. To me, that was suspicious.
He was just calm. He was pleasant. He was polite. He didn't have the near panic that everybody else we met after that had.
I asked Scott to take me in the house. I wanted to know if there was any sign of struggle or a break-in.
Scott never made any claims that there was a home intrusion, that there was somebody had broken in the house and abducted her by force. For me, it was pretty much immediate that there was foul play here, for the simple reason that Lacey didn't lead an at-risk lifestyle. When you have somebody like that goes missing, the first place.
One of the questions I have is, why did you want to get Ron a boat as a Christmas gift?
I really love the idea of grandparents. And I wanted him to have a relationship with Connor. And part of that would be fishing because, Ron really enjoyed it. And then he'd be going all the time. You have something to kind of bring us together as well. I did
Telling a question I thought what about resources available to use all my mother-in-law tonight. You saw some of my wife's friends about counseling and that kind of thing.
Yeah. He said, it sure would be nice to get some grief counselors for the family. And I'm thinking BS, because he knew. Those were all red flags to me. He's really concerned, but what does he do? Nothing concerning.
Yeah, I know there's this narrative that I wasn't concerned or something, but there were so many times when I was on the edge and just trying to hang on. I was surprised to read that in their reports, and it's all reported falsely.
She was a great witness and provided information for us that took us to a place where we could eliminate other people from having abducted her. The only one person that would not cooperate all the way and help us exclude.
And I'm like, Scott, we got a search warrant. You got to get out. We're going to do it anyway.
He just denied us the ability to try and do more things that would clear him if he didn't have anything to do with this. Scott looks at the search warrant and he says to Al, where's the trust? It just seemed like a misplaced concern when he should have been concerned more about where she is and is she going to come back. Amber said,
No, I wasn't the last one to see Lacey that day. There are so many credible witnesses who saw her walking in our neighborhood. I've recently learned that one of the reports, the person came down and talked to the police at their command center. And the police told him, no, you're wrong. You did not see her. Just dismissed him without even looking into it. Now it's devastating to learn that kind of stuff.
And Donald Pierce.
their cooperation level was off the charts.
They both polygraphed. They wanted the polygraphs released to the media because they wanted the people in the jail to know that they were not involved in this case.
Stephen Todd and Glenn Pierce, Neither one of them is dark skinned, not African American, but also neither one of them has ever been associated with a van. They said that they used a car and a bike to commit the burglaries.
The informant told police that up to 5 people were involved, and they didn't look into any of the others.
Well, I'd like to see who these additional people are and where they came up with the idea that additional people were involved in the burglary itself. I don't see anything that would suggest that. Diane Jackson claimed that she saw a van cross the street from the Peterson house on the 24th. She couldn't even really confirm what the color of the van was. And when you have that kind of discrepancy.
2 that we know burgled the house across the street. We don't know who else was in that burglary. We know there were others. There was just no desire to pursue what the evidence was telling them. I mean, it was the evidence that they just decided to ignore and go with theory. I'd had people spit on me at gas stations. I'd received death threats on the phone.
Scott, what about the allegations of a girlfriend? Are you willing to take a photograph?
I had someone in the front yard claiming they were a witch, burying things in the front lawn. I wish I could say I was stronger, but all that stuff did take a toll on me. I just remembered how insane I was going with no sleep and worried about Connor and Lacey, and what seemed like just a apathetic response from the police department.
I can't reply. I can't say, well, it's in Holmes's report. He's got it all in there.
All it takes, one juror. Some of them thought, are we going crazy? Maybe, is it possible that it wasn't her? And guess what happens to that witness? That becomes a weak witness for the defense.
And Lacey's disappearance were unrelated and wouldn't allow any evidence in the trial.
Everyone discounted the burglary because they believed that it happened after Lacey's disappearance.
It meant the jury.
I don't think that Amber Fry was the issue. I think that this had been planned before Amber Fry even got in the picture.
I've had people after the trial come up to me and say, was he really guilty? And I go, are you serious? I would find somebody that
wanted to find Scott Peterson guilty just for the sake of finding him guilty or because of public opinion. My decision was nothing more than what I found based on evidence and testimony.
Never admit it. He'll go to his grave with it. And then he'll go to hell, straight to hell and rot.
I was still expecting to go home that.
I had a face-to-face interview with a detective.
A meth addict, and it was a crime of opportunity. The airport district was sort of a high crime area, not far from Lacey and Scott's house. And there was a larger effort to burglarize houses in that neighborhood. I would call it a criminal network. I suspect that more people were involved in the burglary than Stephen Todd and Glenn Pierce. This is just a working theory. I haven't been able to prove it yet, and that comes to the question of smoking gun, but I think it's much more complicated than what the police believe.
Stephen Todd and Glenn Pierce admitted their involvement with the Medina burglary, telling the police that the burglary happened on December 27th. When the police pointed out to them that it couldn't have happened on the 27th because the Medinas were already home, they changed their story and said that the burglary happened on the 26th. It wasn't until much later that people began to question whether this burglary really occurred on December 26th. We believe that Lacey encountered the Medina burglary on December 24th. At 11:40 a.m., Diane Jackson saw 3 men that were dark-skinned, not African-American, in front of the Medina home.
So I think Stephen Todd shared information about the Medina home with people in the airport district. It's their practice to share targets like that. It's possible that 3 men in the van or some of his friends or accomplices.
So what likely happened is other people showed up to help. The police have never identified that van, never identified the men associated with the van, and that van was parked directly in front of the house that was burglarized. It's directly across the street from Scott and Lacey's home. So this confrontation with Lacey could have involved the people in the van, not necessarily Stephen Todd and Glenn Pierce.
Stephen Todd confessed almost immediately to the burglary, and I think that says something. I think he was told, you're going to have to take the fall. I mean, there's a confidential informant that turned him in. So he was going to serve time regardless. And we're worried about whether she would call the police.
So if you didn't kill Lacey, who killed Lacey?
Yeah, there was a burglary across the street from my home. There are a lot of people home. And I believe that Lacey went over there to see what was going on. That's the first mistake.
To have a verdict of guilty and then the death penalty, no words can describe the disappointment, the sadness. It was a huge shock. I thought, despite the hatred towards Scott, that they would actually listen to the evidence and they would base their decision on the evidence and only on the evidence. Because I thought, there's no evidence here. There's no forensic evidence. There's nothing to tie him to the murder. Our client didn't do it. Nothing has changed since. In fact, at this point, years later, there's more exonerating evidence that have come to light.
In my years of investigating it, I investigated a lot of leads and look at all possibilities. That Scott was involved in a murder for hire, Lacey was abducted for her unborn child. Most of them have been dead ends, but a process of elimination at this point. And, there are a few things that are left that are promising. And I think the most important piece of information is the van. At the very beginning, I lived in a house right next to where the burned van was found.
The thing about the airport district, it isn't that big of an area, and to have a burned out van found near the relative of one of the burglars isn't anything, to me, that would be suspicious whatsoever. Why now is this just coming up? It seems...
been in my mind and has kept me awake and has bothered me at night. Why didn't this get... needs further investigation.
They couldn't determine whether it was human blood or not, but there was human DNA. I contacted the defense and said, are you aware of these photographs? They weren't aware of it. So they asked for the photos themselves, and then they asked for further testing. It's possible that they could get a sequencing and find out whose DNA is on that mattress.
We want some DNA tests done, so we'll be filing for that. We want further discovery, so we'll be asking for that as well. Because previous district attorney of Stanislaus County has said publicly that they continue to receive tips and leads. They've kept all that secret.
When you think about it, it basically comes down, there was a crime, there's DNA. Should probably find out whose DNA it is. Pretty simple.
To show that someone's innocence.
Tell me about the Croton watch.
She inherited it before Christmas, not long before Christmas. And it was kind of gaudy. It had a bezel with diamonds around it. We joked about it. We called it her rapper watch.
Was not followed up on.
Now, do you think some things were followed up on by the Modesto police, but documents or related evidence wasn't turned over to the defense?
I strongly believe, based on the sum total of the reports and how things are cross-referenced, that there's a strong possibility that we're missing reports on the Croton watch. It was confirmed we were missing reports on this burned van when Scott's appellate attorney in 2006 requested from the district attorney, hey, can you send me your whole file on this van? Scott's defense attorney, Mark Garagos, initially had a few files on this van, but he did not have photos of that bloodstained mattress.
People want the answer they believed in to continue to be the answer. We all are. We're slow to admit we're wrong.